Hello Cloud Pedagogians, welcome to this hands-on lab where we'll be creating a basic Amazon S3 lifecycle policy. Amazon S3 is a powerful storage tool for cloud computing. AWS allowed users to implement the lifecycle policies on the S3 buckets for optimizing cost. As the name suggests, a lifecycle policy allows you to specify actions to perform on objects based on their lifecycle. Different S3 storage classes allows you to store different types of data according to your access needs. For example, AWS Glacier is a long-term archive storage service that provides lower cost storage than other AWS storage options. When data has not been accessed for a certain period of time, it can be moved automatically between S3 storage classes using a lifecycle policy. AWS lifecycle policy actions include transitioning objects between classes, deleting or archiving them. More so, you can have as much policies for each S3 bucket. Basically, using a lifecycle policy, you are instructing Amazon AWS on how to handle an object throughout its lifetime. Also, if you upload your data to AWS for archiving, this tool will help you save tons in storage cost and also perfect for data that uses access for a specific time period. In this lab, we will create a basic Amazon S3 lifecycle policy. First, we will create an S3 bucket to which we will upload the folders and objects into the bucket. After the objects have been successfully uploaded to S3, we will create a lifecycle policy which instructs S3 to move objects to Glacier archive after the time set within our lifecycle policy has been reached. After this time limit is reached, we will then be able to confirm that our objects now resides within Glacier archive. Before starting the lab, you should be familiar with hands-on knowledge of S3 bucket and conceptual understanding of S3 bucket and S3 lifecycle policy. So, are you ready to reduce your AWS bills with Amazon S3 lifecycle policy? If yes, let's move forward with our task. In task 1, we are going to create an S3 bucket and upload some files into it. In task 2, we are going to create a lifecycle policy for our bucket. So start with task 1. Create S3 bucket and upload the files into the bucket. Simply type S3 in the search bar in the AWS console management page. Click S3 and we'll first need to get started by creating our bucket. So we will navigate over to the create bucket button. And the first thing we will need to do is name our bucket. Keep in mind that the bucket names must be unique and cannot contain spaces or unique characters. So let's go ahead and name that. We'll keep our region the same. And here is a setting to choose to copy settings from an existing bucket. We don't have any bucket settings that we would like to duplicate, so we will continue. And we currently don't have any other tags that we would like to list. But tagging is also great when we would like to track costs for a particular application. You can tag your bucket. And we will also bypass default encryption and we will continue just to go down to create our create bucket and we will click. And we can see that our bucket has been created. Next, we will need to insert our folder with our objects within our S3 bucket that we created. Let's do this by first clicking the bucket. Then we will navigate to the upload button. We will click upload. And now we are at the upload page where we have several options to add files and folders to our S3 bucket. Here we can see we can either click add files or we can add folder. Let's click add folder. And we will go to our desktop and we will upload CP master files folder. We will click upload. We will click upload as we would like to upload the entire folder. And here we have within our folder CP master files. Look at my files. I have files starting with CP file. This is the name we are going to use when we create a lifecycle policy. Let's scroll down. We can see our destination where the file will be within the S3 bucket. Let's go ahead and click upload. And now we can see that we have successfully uploaded our folder. Good job, you have created an S3 bucket and uploaded files successfully. In the task 2, we are going to create a lifecycle policy for S3 bucket. Now that your bucket has been created and configured, you are ready to upload archive data to the Amazon S3 Glacier storage classes. The Management tab is where you will find all you need to create a lifecycle policy for your S3 bucket. Once you have clicked on the Management tab, click Add Lifecycle Rule among the options presented to you. And here we see the place where we will create our lifecycle rule. So we'll simply click Create Lifecycle Rule. The first thing we will need to do here is create our lifecycle rule name. On the Name and Scope tab, enter a relevant rule name which must be unique that helps you identify the lifecycle later by its name. Once you have named your rule, then we will need to define the scope of our rule. This is very important. The first scope says limit the scope of this rule to use the filters below. The second rule says allow this rule to be applied to all objects in the bucket. And so for this particular example, we will leave it on the first one. So scroll down and we'll see here our filter types. Let's give this a prefix for CP file. As we already know, the file that we uploaded within our S3 bucket is labeled with CP file1.jpg, CP file2.jpg, etc. So this particular rule will pick up that particular file. AWS allows object tagging for easy segregation of storage. If your S3 bucket doesn't have any object tags, skip the add filter to limit scope to prefix or tags portion. Let's scroll down as there are no tags that we would like to add, but we will need to define the lifecycle rule actions. So within the lifecycle rule actions, we have several rules here that can be used, but we will only use the first two, which says that we will transition the current versions of the object to different storage classes and previous version of the objects to storage classes. And we will click the first two, and here we see that we have some additional boxes to fill out here. Let's start with the first one. We would like to transition our current versions of objects between storage classes. So let's pick up the storage class, which will be Glacier Flexible Retrieval. And let's say for every current object, after 30 days, we would like for that objects to be moved to Glacier. And we will click the checkbox to acknowledge. So we'll scroll down, and this particular section focuses on how we transition non-current versions of object to storage class. So for our objects that are non-current, let's say we would like to send them to Glacier Deep Archive, and we would like to do that every 15 days. And we will do the same here and click to acknowledge the difference in pricing. And so here we have a timeline summary of the rule that we have just created, stating that on day 0 of current version up to day 30, a current version remains in S3, and on day 30 that object is transitioned to Amazon Glacier. And for our previous versions, they remain at rest in S3 from day 0 to day 15. After day 15, we will transition those to Glacier Deep Archive. And so we will click Create Rule. And here we can see that our rule has been successfully created. Good job! You successfully created a lifecycle policy for your S3 bucket. Congratulations! You have created an AWS S3 lifecycle policy which is excellent at optimizing your cloud costs for S3 buckets. Before exiting the lab, make sure you clear all the resources which are created in this lab. I hope you are very much interested in doing and learning about it. So keep doing and see you again in my next lab. Until then, take care.